Hey there, hey friends, Ken here, your Thrifty Apprentice, and welcome back to another Thrifty Review video. So, hi there friends. Guys, finally, we are getting around to taking a look at the Caran 76 count of Museum Aquarelle watercolor pencils. Now, I have been craving these pencils for quite some time, and I feel super blessed that they were sent to me. So let me say from the top of the video, I did not purchase these pencils out of my own pocket. They were sent to the studio as a gift, just in case that has any bearings on how you feel of my opinion concerning these pencils. So let's just jump right in here. The pencils come in a two-piece, top open, corrugated box that is thick and well put together. On the top lid, you're going to get some beautiful illustrated color swatches here that shows you imagery of what the pencils look like, including an image of the full barrel and the wording that's on it. It's watercolor pencils, 76, and it does say that they soft watercolor pencils of extra fine quality, and they are Swiss made. Now let's see. I'm just going to remove the top so we can look at the side here, and you can see what it says. Flip it around to this side, basically saying the same thing all around the side of the box, with the exception of two sides. And the inside of that lid does have foam protection in it to help keep the pencil safe and in place as far as being transported. Now, if you flip the box over on the back, you're going to get quite a few things, and I did cover this in the unboxing of these pencils, which you can find on the channel, so I'm not going to go too in-depth with this. Just going to touch on the fact that there's a color swatching here that is digitized that shows you the color reference number for each of the colors. Again, another picture of the full barrel and actual size, and the different parts of the pencil itself are labeled. There's going to be a full range of the sort of progression of the Caran company as far as when they released what set of what pencils, be they watercolor pencils, technical pencils, or colored pencils, which I think is really cool. Most of you may already know I'm a huge Caran fan, although that will have no bearings on my honest opinion of this pencil set as we go through this review. So that's pretty much the gist of the box. Of course, again, I told you the pencils are Swiss made. It's going to give you the Caran information here in case you wanted the address for whatever reason. And there's the indication to let you know that they are watercolor pencils. All right, let's jump into this. Opening the box, you get a brochure. The brochure is pretty straightforward, saying the same things that the front of the box does, and of course, housing beautiful illustration. If you open it up, it's almost doing the same thing that the back of the box does, except for specifically concentrating on the Museum Aquarelle pencils. It shows you, the different sets that you can get, from the standard assortment to the marine assortment, the landscape assortment, the standard assortment in the 40 pencils versus the 76 full range. Then of course you can get the 12 assorted pencils. So you can get the standard assorted in 12, 40, or the full 76 range, or you can get it specifically curated for marine painting, illustrating, specifically curated for landscape painting or illustrating. And then there is the full range in the wooden box, which is pretty expensive to say the least, pretty expensive. So all of this information, again, written in different languages, specific passages I'm able to read, and it basically just talks about the pencil's environmental qualities and things of that nature of the wood. So, you know, very helpful information or interesting information on the pencil set itself. Now let's just take a look at the barrel here. You're going to get 76 barrels that are divided out into trays. Each of the trays are very substantial, well put together. Again, corrugated cardboard with foam padding on the inside that have wells drilled for the pencils to fit in. That's going to help keep them stable, keep them from moving and rummaging around. Because of course we know, whether it's watercolor pencils or whatever kind of pencil it may be, the one thing you want to do is always try to avoid dropping them. And just the setup of this particular pencil box does help to prevent that. Now, there are 3 separate trays, and what I also like is that Caran d'Ache seemed to have taken the note from many different pencil reviews when it comes to the tray, and adding the addition of lift tabs on the side to make it easier for you to remove each tray, especially as you get deeper into the box. Now, the bottom row is not on a tray. It is actually adhered to the actual box itself, but it does still have the foam padding with the individual wells for each of the pencils to fit into. So that is pretty much what the box is going to look like. Let's take a look at the actual pencils themselves. So you're going to get a black barrel with a color coding swatch chip on the end. The pencils are domed, so you're not able to see right away whether the pencils are centered. But of course, we know we can always test it with sharpening the pencils, and I'll get to that in just a moment. On the pencil, you're going to have kind of silvery white writing, which stands out really well against the black paint on the barrel, making it pretty easy to read. Now, the information on the barrel does let you know, of course, the name of the set, the Museum Aquarelle, company, Caran d'Ache, where they're made, Swiss made. Is going to give you the actual set number and then the color number for this particular color or each individual particular color. If you turn it around, you're going to get a color name in 2 different languages, one German, one English. And then if you flip it on around, you're going to get a UPC code and light fast ratings. Now, here's the thing. The UPC code does let you know that not only can these pencils be purchased in a set, but they can also be purchased open stock. Just in case you decided you only wanted to get a few pencils. Light fast star rating runs from 1 to 5, with 5 being the most light fast and 1 being the most fugitive. Ironically enough, all of the pencils in this set, or most of the pencils in this set, should I say, range between 4 and 5 stars. They do kind of go across the 1 to 5 star spectrum, but the majority of the pencils themselves do contain rather high light fast ratings. Keeping in mind that these are light fast ratings conducted by Caran d'Ache, and we have known it to be that some companies will just kind of copy and paste light fast and pigment information from independent testers like ASTM. So anyway, the point is the pencils do have a light fast ratings on them, and you can source both the pigment number and the light fast ratings on the Caran d'Ache site. Now, one thing that they like to do, or like to let their customers know, is that the pigment numbers across the ranges are kind of the same, which I think is really good, meaning that, you know, you could use their color pencils in combination with their watercolor pencils, and you're supposedly getting the same pigments in those particular colors. Now, of course, I don't work for Caran d'Ache. All of this is information that's provided by the company. And as I tell you guys, whether it's a professional company or a budget company, you take everything with a grain of salt and really do your research if things of that importance, or if things of that nature, are really important to you. Okay, friends, sorry about that. I did pause the video for a moment because I didn't want that siren to continue to blast. Now, moving on to discussing the actual lid of the pencil and the pencils themselves. Earlier, I mentioned that the pencils were domed and you couldn't tell right off whether they were centered. So one way to test it would be to sharpen the pencil, and depending on the evenness and consistency of the sharpening, it will let you know whether the pencils are centered. And I will say that for the most part, I didn't experience any kind of off-centered pencils. Nothing was warped. Oh, I can't roll them in here. And then no pencils are warped or deformed. All of the writing and the printing seem uniform and crystal and clear. The pencil is shaped so that it won't roll away from you, which is really good if you kind of sit your pencils out on your desk. Although I tend to leave my pencils in the tray when I use them. I just kind of sit them up like this, so I'll be aware of the pencil that I'm using. But when it comes to my pencils, especially pencils that cost as much as these do, I do try to take heed to take care of them as much as possible, even in use. So the pencil, for it to be a watercolor pencil, actually has a pretty soft lid. I did not experience like the sound of extreme scratchiness when using these. Well, not unless I was using them on a pretty textured paper. Now, they are super saturated. The color is super intense. They lay down really well on many different types of paper, and I did try them on cotton paper. I tried them on cellulose paper, 140 pound, 90 pounds. So I really did kind of try to test the pencils out across a range of papers to see if the pigment load and payoff would be the same. And I'm happy to say that I did not notice huge inconsistencies in paper types. So that was a really good thing. Now the set contains a white, which is pretty opaque in its dry form, and it contains a black, of course, which is pretty opaque as well, and layerable and buildable. The pencils, of course, can be used wet or dry. With that said, I did not notice a huge smudging tendency with the pencils in dry form, and that was one of my things about the Abrador pencils when I tested them. They are a lovely pencil. I thought they were really great and really wonderful, super saturated. They offered the artist information as well, and I can really understand why people like them. But for me, in the way I paint and my painting style, one of the issues that I had with them is that in dry form, unless I did something to prevent it, a lot of the pencils did seem to smudge and move a little bit more than I would have wanted them to in their dry form. However, I did not experience as much smudging with these. There were some colors that wouldn't move if I ran my finger across it in dry form. And I do tell you guys all the time that I have pretty oily skin, so that could play a part in it. But that is something that I thought I should tell you guys, just in case it's important to you. Now let's just look at the color swatching we did here, which I do believe we did this on camera together, maybe doing a live. And when I transferred the information, I just put the pencil number beside each color so I can quickly reference if I needed to. But as you can see, this is a single layer swatching. I didn't try to build any second or third layers on top of it. And this swatching sheet is pretty saturated for that to be single layer. The pencils dissolve so well in water. The slightest touch of a damp, wet brush made the color just kind of release and become so much more bold and vibrant than it was in its dry form. Not to say that they aren't saturated and vibrant in their dry form, because they really are. And I noticed that throughout the little creation processes that I did with it, to put down a layer, dissolve it with water, and then to put a dry layer of that same hue on top just made the colors seem to come alive and be sort of luminous. So we're going to take a look at that in just a moment. But very diverse range of colors. I did not feel like I was missing anything or that I needed to have a color to augment anything. On top of the fact that these are watercolor pencils, and having so many properties like watercolors, you can mix colors together to get secondary and tertiary colors. You can do all types of blending due to the fact that they do have water-soluble effects to them. So overall, a really nice range of what I consider professional pencils, because in order to be considered professional in the pencil range, the artist's information should include the color name, the stock number, the light fast ratings, and you should be able to source the pigment code. Those are generally the requirements, or some of the requirements, to truly be considered a professional pencil. So yeah, nice pencils. I do know that there are other reviews out on YouTube about these pencils, and I really wanted to just kind of add my 2 cents from my perspective about them, considering the way that I use watercolor pencils. Now, I do perform standalone illustrations with the pencils, but I really use them in mixed media a lot more, as I do with all of my products. So I did test the pencils in standalone form though for this review. Now, did some color mixing with them just so I can show you that the colors will definitely mix and create other colors. I created 2 color wheels, one using a lemon yellow, a vermilion, and a dark ultramarine, which is what it's called in this set. Get a vibrant, beautiful orange, a dark saturated purple, and a really earthy, nice green that is actually really different from the hues that are included in the actual set, which I was really impressed with the fact that, the secondary colors didn't seem to mix to make something that was already included. Really nice, right? So on the second wheel, I did a regular yellow, scarlet, and phthalo blue. And again, very beautiful mixtures, very saturated. There is not a huge shift from dispersing them with water, making them wet, to them drying. That saturation does not fade or shift a lot. Now, with all of that said, I personally don't believe that every single thing will be light fast. I do believe that throughout this testing, I noticed that some of these pencils may actually have a white included in them that will lessen the light fastness of the pencils. And I know that there are a lot of people who really do not subscribe to the whole light fast pigment information conversation, and I completely respect that. So I always try to offer information from both sides of the spectrum. So if you take that information out of it, these are probably the most vibrant, saturated, beautiful watercolor pencils I have ever used. But they come with a price tag, and they come with a healthy price tag. Now, I did some mixing here in order to get some neutrals. I used ultramarine and raw umber in one. I used ultramarine and brown in one. I used ultramarine, and I forget what this brown is called, but it's more like a Van Dyke brown color, in my opinion. And all three of those mixtures gave me very beautiful neutrals that were gray leaning with different temperatures, because one was really warm, one was really cool, and one of the mixtures seemed really neutral. And I enjoyed that I was able to achieve such a different range of mixtures with the pencils without it looking like muddy or cloudy, or like I may have been using a watercolor pencil. You know how some of them can get really gummy and goopy when you start trying to mix the colors together? So I was really happy. Of course, I wasn't expecting that, but it was really good not to experience it. Preliminary little painting demo here on my mixing sheet. Now, this is New York Central 100% cotton 140-pound cold pressed paper, and this is from Muhi 100% cotton 140-pound cold pressed paper. So both of these are cotton papers that I did the testing on. Did a little basket of blueberries here. Now, actually, this became one of the illustrations for one of my World Watercolor Month paintings, and I kind of redid it on a live with you guys. Different pattern on the basket. I think it was for the prompt weave. So this was sort of the inspiration for that. And I did this one completely with the watercolor pencils, absolutely nothing else. I was able to get the shadows that I need, the saturation that I need. I really enjoyed it. And here I was able to put on sort of a small secondary highlight on the top of my blueberries using that white pencil in its dry form. The pencils are very easy to control because they are a pencil. You basically draw out your illustration, color in your illustration, and then you're going to use a brush slightly damp in order to disperse that into a watercolor effect. Really good. I mean, I don't really have anything negative, honestly, to say about the pencils, other than the fact that there are probably some white mixed into some of them. And I feel that's the case for all pencils, not just them. And the cost, which we're going to get to in a second. I do think it's important to note that of all of Caran d'Ache's watercolor pencil lines, and I think there's like 4 or 5, let's see. Yeah, maybe 4 or 5. This is probably the only one that I would say I would consider professional, because they actually provide the pigment numbers for these as well, which I think is really cool. And just in case you're looking for another quick reference, you guys know I do always refer you to Kimberly Crick, because I think she does really good work. You can check out Kimberly Crick's blog on these pencils, and you'll actually get to see light fast testing, visual photos of them, the pigment numbers, the light fast ratings, how those light fast ratings actually stood up to being tested against the sun. Very good information if you subscribe to knowing all of that. So yeah, that's that. Let's take a look at some of the things that I've done with them, just so you can get a general idea of how I was able to come to the conclusions that I did, or why I like the pencils as much as I do. And let's be clear, I've tested other professional watercolor pencils: Faber-Castell, Aberjour, Staedtler, Caran Aquarelle, Koh-i-Noor, what are these? Mandalus, I believe they're called. Let's see, the Caran Super Color Soft pencils, the Derwent watercolor pencils, the Derwent Inktense pencils. So I've tested quite a few pencils that one might consider artist professional range, and I have to say that this is my favorite set of all. And I'm not being biased, I promise. So here is an illustration, a really quick kind of sketch done. I think this was in the creation station, using the pencils on 100% cotton hot press paper. So they performed really well. And what I love is that they are so saturated that even on a paper this smooth with so little tooth, I was able to use them, get down a lot of color without causing any type of dents or damage to the paper. And look how saturated they came out. Just amazing. Really nice pencils. Offer you a super level of control, especially when you're kind of doing a landscape. And let's be clear, pencils are really great for travel as well, because they give you an alternative to carrying around paints. You can carry a handful of pencils, use those straight pencils, mix those colors together still, just like watercolors. So I feel like pencils are a great option for travel sketching. Let's see, there was a video that came out on the channel. I forget what paint I was testing, but we did some pumpkin squash gourds. I forget what paints, but the second one that I did was this, I think it's called a gooseneck squash, where I found a reference photo on Unsplash and we painted this. So this is on the channel as well if you want to check it out. But again, great control with the pencils. I had some areas where I wanted to lift them out, and they did lift because I was trying to force them. But always keep in mind when you're using a watercolor pencil, you definitely want to practice water control. And I always suggest a golden Tacklon or a nylon bristled brush, because it's going to hold less water, and the firmness, sort of the spring back of those brushes, I feel help push the pigment around on the paper better, especially when you have a toothier paper. But I feel like the illustration came out pretty well. I was able to get my shadows in. I did a little color mixing here, but for the most part, I think I just used 2 color greens directly from the set, and then some bleed-proof gouache, some brown, and of course a gray and a black. But again, I enjoyed using the pencils. They're fun to draw with. They really are. Let's see, there was another illustration done on the channel as well. This was for June watercolor calendar, and I think we painted a honeysuckle. Again, I was able to achieve really nice detail with the pencils. Great control, beautiful color saturation, beautiful blending. They worked well with the gouache on top of them. They didn't resist the gouache at all. Very enjoyable painting experience. The only thing I really didn't like about this is that I'm not a huge fan of the paper that Grabby uses to produce their watercolor calendars. But that's a personal beef with the paper, nothing with the pencils. And then of course, there is also this particular illustration that I do believe is on the channel as well, where we did some, what are these things called? I forget what the flower is called now. But look at just look at this. Look at the saturation on that paper. And for the background, the pressure was so light, yet I still had so much color to kind of blend down and get this very nice kind of gradiated effect in the background. Very nice pencils, man, if I have to say so myself. So this is Artist Loft Level 2 Artist paper. It's 140 pound cold press acid free, and that's the paper that I used to bind one of my custom sketchbooks that I made. So that's painted on that paper, and the gourd I showed you is on Winsor & Newton 100% cotton professional watercolor paper, 140 pound. So for the most part, I did most of the testing on 100% cotton paper, with the exception of those flowers that I cannot think of the name of to save my life. As far as price goes, this set is currently listed on Amazon, hold on to your seat, for $324. Making it somewhere around $13.50 per pencil. You know, an easy price tag to swallow. I also found the pencils on jerrysautorama.com. Again, the set runs $324, which is pretty much the same as Amazon. And of course, you're going to get free shipping either way. On Amazon, if you're a Prime member, on Jerry's with a price tag that big, you get free shipping. It really just, I guess it really just matters on which one gets them to you quicker. And just to make things fair and round things out, I checked 2 other sites. dickblick.com. Again, the 76 count pencil is $324. And last but not least, jacksonart.com also has the 76 count listed for $324. So it's pretty unanimous that the set runs $324, making it somewhere roughly around $13.50 per pencil. So that is a pretty steep price tag, as I said earlier. To me, that is the only drawback of the pencils. I do know that these pencils are probably outside of many people's budgets, but do keep in mind that if there's something you're interested in, you can break them down and get them in much smaller sets. And because they're watercolor pencils, they will blend. The 12 count box set typically runs somewhere around 48 books. If you do not believe that that's still too steep, it's 12 pencils, and it will offer you light fast pencils that will mix together and give you many colors that you would get in the 76 range anyway. So yeah, you can, there are economical ways, or possibly if you were interested in them, you can purchase a few pencils open stock so you don't break the bank. And again, because they're watercolor pencils, the pencils will mix. I didn't throw in that the pencils sharpen really well. I was just thinking of that as I was looking at them. The pencils also sharpen really well. I went trying to sharpen the pencils in mine, and I sharpened mine in just a regular old Office Depot electric sharpener that sits here on my desk. And I also did not experience a lot of breakage when using the pencils as far as illustrating was concerned when pressing them against the paper. But keep in mind, they're super saturated. You don't have to use a lot of pressure unless you want to in order to get a really big color payoff. So friends, there you have it. That's pretty much my 2 cents on pencils. Again, I did not think that I was going to be adding anything that was too new to the conversation about these pencils, other than my own perspective, how they work for me as far as my painting style goes, what I like to do with watercolor pencils, how I like to use them, and the detail that I like to be able to create with them. For me, this is probably the best watercolor pencil. Now, would I recommend them on a, of course I would. On a star scale of 1 to 5 in the professional range, I would give the pencils a 5, hands down. Okay, let me be realistic. I would give the pencils a 4.5 because the price is pretty steep. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, that kind of is what it is. If it wasn't for the price, they would definitely be a 5 for me. Of course, I would recommend them, but I wouldn't recommend them to a newbie. I mean, these are expensive pencils. This is definitely not the set that you go buy if you're just exploring watercolor pencils. If you just want to try them out to see if you like them, knowing there's a chance that you might not like them, this is definitely not the set that you go buy. Even if you're just a hobbyist who happen to use watercolor pencils on an every now and then basis. I mean, if you want to treat yourself and have a sort of a luxury pencil gift, then by all means. But there are other sets out there that are going to be much more economical and that offer you good quality, a good quality product that won't break the bank. Let's be clear, these are more expensive than average door, not much more, but they are more expensive. Nonetheless, this is still probably the best watercolor pencil I've ever used, and I've tested many. So there you have it, friends. I hope you found something interesting about me babbling on in this video. If you did, don't forget to sprinkle a little love and give the video a thumbs up. You can hit up the comment section and let me know what you thought of the video, what you thought of the information that you heard. Have you used the pencils? Did you have the same experience I have? What are your thoughts on the price of the pencils? The conversation open to all. Of course, we just keep it respectful in the comment section, and I would love to hear what you guys have to say. If you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to get back to answering them as soon as I possibly can. Feel free to share the video because maybe somebody else would like to hear me ramble on about the pencils as well. Don't forget, if you're new And if you're returning and you haven't subscribed, do go ahead and hit that subscription button and that notification bell so that you know when we go live and when we upload. And of course, you can check the video description for all of the relevant links, the social sites, Patreon, Palm Street, recommended product list, artist wish list, and links in case you decide you want to purchase these pencils. But keep in mind, regardless of what you hear any reviewers say, you do what's best for you and your painting style. With that, my friends, I'll bid you adieu. And as I tell you at the end of every single video, just keep creating.